The adults, you can just kind of nudge them if you want. A few years ago, I was driving down Cold Creek Canyon, and I heard this sound. I was going to go watch a Broncos game with some friends, and all of a sudden there was this ping, 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 ping sound. I thought, uh-oh, what is that? And the engine starts to shut down, and I say something else to myself, and I pull over with that gut-wrenching awareness that the car was dead. The engine just shut off on its own, and it pulled over. Car was dead. That was it. Nothing I could do about it. Some belt broke, which caused something else to break, which made the engine seize up. I don't know anything about engines, but I found out it would cost me more to fix those parts than the car was worth. So goodbye, car. You've been there? Isn't that frustrating? This one little part costs more than the car. So what I did with my dead car, I decided to donate it to the Nederland Fire Department so they could have some fun cutting it apart and setting it on fire and then putting it out. That sounds pretty fun, doesn't it? They didn't invite me. I don't know why. I would have had a blast with that. Rick Durr did send me a picture after they cut the top of it. And after that, I assume that they put it up in flames and the new officers were able to put it out with hoses and all. And after they were done playing with all of that, I have no idea what happened to it. Maybe they took it down and they brought it to a scrap yard or something. That's my assumption. My hope is that they took the metal and they melted it down and they turned it into something useful. I can imagine they melted it down into maybe doorknobs for a school, or maybe it was little wire for a chicken coop, something like that. That'd make me feel good. I went ahead and bought a new car, a new-to-me car, which is nice enough, although it gets closer and closer to its last miles. And I think eventually it will become a bench or maybe an aluminum can of craft beer somewhere. A boy can dream. Some people in the world love the smell of new cars, and I love the smell of old cars becoming something new. I'm sure that the metal processing smells terrible, but I love this idea that broken things can serve other purposes. I just find it so meaningful, this notion that whatever fails in this world can still contribute in some way to making the world a better place for someone. Yeah, but that's a car. What a terrible analogy for Easter. Well, we've been comparing cars and driving to God and faith for about 6 weeks, all through Lent. Just like Jesus told stories about sheep and sandals and farming and fishing, we've been trying to learn about this mysterious spiritual life by getting a hold of something that we know a little bit about, like low oil or road rage. We use that and we figure out something about the holy. In the sense, the way I figure it is this. The central story of the Christian tradition, a tradition whose primary sources and primary medium are stories, the central story is about something dead coming to life. Something dead coming to life. Now, some would add a layer and say this is God incarnate, being broken and buried, only to rise and change the world by changing our hearts for centuries. Desmond Tutu says it this way. Even if the parts of us and the cars and all the things in the world fall apart, Tutu says, goodness is stronger than evil. Love is stronger than hate. Light is stronger than darkness. Life is stronger than death. And the way I figure it, if that is anything more than just a story, it tells us something we know deep in our guts, but the things we know deepest here, we have to be reminded the most over and over. The central Christian story of Easter tells us something about the regular rhythm of life itself. The rhythm of life being stronger than death. The first part of the rhythm, things fall apart. Things are frail. Some things carry more significance, some are less, but things fall apart. They can't last forever. That is part of the universe we live in, that things fall apart. Cars and bodies and all kinds of things. 2, things get recreated. Things we don't expect to get recreated. At least we don't expect them to be used in these new ways. Things get put back together, often in better ways than they started. In this universe, brokenness cannot last forever. Maybe this sounds better. 3, lives get redeemed. Lives that seem destined to despair, lives whose scars can inspire again. And hear that word, inspire. Inspire again, re-inspire, to breathe in again. By some crazy estimate, we breathe in atoms all the time that were part of other things in the world. So we breathe in atoms that were at one point part of Shakespeare and Mozart and Lincoln and King and Stalin, Genghis Khan. and nameless people we've never heard of. We breathe in these atoms all the time. This is a universe where things stop working, but we continue to breathe in and inspire each other. And 4, the last part of the rhythm, life restores itself. The whole life, the big life, big L life. When life seems stuck in the shadows of fear, things move to the light. Life that doubts the most finds meaning. Life that is preyed upon by evil finds a way. This is a universe where life, the life that seems to give up, that we give up on, never gives up on us. At least that's how I understand the world around us. That's how I understand the Easter story. So that's where my faith rests, the hope of redemption for all that is and for all that we are. But is that true? Do things renew? Do lives repair? Is there something about the world that reorganizes and rearranges and revolutionizes? I think so, but you can disagree. You can point to things that die and things that are thrown away. You can tell me this is a true statement. Everything in the world eventually ends up in a dump or in a cemetery. Which I guess is true, but I like the story of my car, carrying on in new ways. I like stories about things being repurposed. I like stories about finding beauty in the brokenness. There's nothing false about dumps and cemeteries. Some stuff lands there forgotten. But stories of renewal are not just Pollyanna and fairy dust. They make me feel closer to something. Stories of renewal make me have a respect for some particular way of life. And whether I want to categorize that into an organized religion or a disorganized spirituality or whatever it might be, I just feel more grounded in a world where things can find new life. And when I fall out of favor with that idea, those are the times I need to remember it the most. But if you want to disagree, you can point to lives that just fall apart and a story. We all know people in our lives who just take everyone down with them. He never amounted to anything. She heard everything. He broke everything he touched. She was just awful. He was evil. I get that, sort of. I never want to classify someone as just good or bad. I don't believe for a minute that's what we are. But some people really don't stand back up. Some people don't allow others to hold them up. And yet, if you have the eyes, if you want to look for it, you can find stories all the time of lives reformed, of addictions faced with strength, of lessons learned with such a price that they have to be true. We see sorrow overcome in the dawn of a smile after so many frowns, as though there is a gravity of joy in the emotional life, at the root of this life. People fail, yes. People are awesome. When I choose the latter, I find myself lifted up by them, as though their presence points me to my purpose, as though our very fulfillment depends on each other. When I choose the other story, I follow them too, right down. Or you can disagree. If you watch the news, you can disagree. The world has messy parts. If you pay any attention to anything going on, the world's always a mess, all the times. I mean, we can't get anything right between poverty and violence and greed and xenophobia, generation after generation. It seems like history is just one piece of suffering after another. At the best, it moves up and down, chaotically. Who knows? At the best, it's up to us to improve everything. Our work. And if we don't do it, the world falls apart even more. You can believe that. I felt that way plenty in my life, except when I look at the world a little bit wider and I open myself up to a great scope, every society has its moments of fragmentation, but existence as a whole seems to evolve, and it seems to evolve toward love. As though love is drawing us somewhere, as though love is carving itself out into being. No matter the graves that we face in this world, there always seems to be someone ready to start a revolution for peace. In every community, no matter how functional or dysfunctional, some saint is there lifting up service. There are movements all the time that stir up life and take the people on the bottom and lift them up so they can breathe. Martin Luther King borrowed this line, but I choose to believe him. The arc of history bends towards justice. So if you are open, there are signs of life everywhere. Everywhere. That's the way the world is formed and reformed. And that's the point of Easter as far as I understand it. And it's the point of the world. It's the point of the faith. And so in my organized religion, in my disorganized spirituality, in my reorganized trust that I can keep going, I remind myself, new life is everywhere. What that doesn't tell me, however, whatever the signs are, that does not tell us what comes next. The flower that rises, there are bulbs out there right now rising. It might tell us a story about the world that always gets warm again, but it is up to us to cultivate the soil and to protect the water. The angry husband who accepts it is time finally to go to counseling, and he's really ready to seize onto grace and transform his life. That's fantastic, but without programs and professionals and mentors and meaningful relationships, that new life will be very, very hard to sustain. There are stories in every cultural tradition I know of about the centrality of redemption and renewal and rebirth, as though somehow every people has a hint that there's something true about the rhythm of life. But unless we make those stories real every day, it's just a story. Unless we challenge brokenness, conquer despair, sacrifice when it's not even worth it, unless we live the good news of Easter, it's just a story. So you are invited to make a habit of seeing the new, of enacting the new, of naming and maybe even honoring the new with rituals and in community. So may we connect with that deep part of ourselves that finds significance rising from the tombs of this world. May we lift others to new life and let them lift us. And may we on this day and forevermore embrace an eternal Easter. Amen.